What if one of Vishnu's most powerful avatars did not come to the world with a weapon, but with silence? What if the divine did not descend to defeat darkness through battle this time, but through awakening? And what if the greatest revolution was not the fall of a demon, not the breaking of a kingdom, but the moment a human heart finally saw through suffering? This is the story of Buddha in the Dashavatara tradition, the avatar who did not roar like Narasimha, did not conquer like Rama, did not carry an axe like Parashurama, but arrived as a presence of stillness, compassion, and profound inner truth. In many Hindu lists of Vishnu's 10 primary avatars, Buddha appears as one of the descents of Vishnu who comes to restore order in a different way. Among all the avatars of Vishnu, Buddha feels different. He does not enter the world through spectacle. He does not first appear as force. He does not restore balance by tearing evil apart in front of everyone's eyes. He restores balance by changing the way suffering is understood. That is what makes this avatar so mysterious. Because when most people think of divine intervention, they imagine action that is visible, a war, a rescue, a miracle, a cosmic victory. But Buddha reminds us of another kind of salvation, the salvation that begins inside, the kind that does not first change the world outside you. It changes the one who is looking at the world. Historically, the Buddha refers to Siddhartha Gautama, the teacher from northern India whose life and teachings gave rise to Buddhism, a major world religion centered on liberation from suffering. He is associated with awakening, compassion, and the path beyond ignorance and suffering. And that is where this story begins. Not in a battlefield, not in a palace of conquest, but in the life of a prince who had everything the world says should be enough. Comfort, protection, privilege, a future prepared in advance. And yet even surrounded by luxury, something inside remained unanswered. Because one of the deepest truths of human life is this: comfort is not the same as peace. You can be protected from pain and still not understand life. You can be surrounded by beauty and still feel the ache of something missing. You can have everything people envy and still feel the quiet pull of a question that refuses to leave. Why do we suffer? In the Buddhist tradition, Gautama's path turns when he confronts realities that no palace can hide forever: aging, sickness, death, and the possibility of spiritual liberation. Those encounters break open his sheltered world and push him toward the search that leads to enlightenment. That moment matters more than it first appears, because many people live exactly like that, not necessarily in wealth, but in distraction, in routines that protect them from facing the deepest questions, until one day life shows them something they cannot unsee. A loss, a diagnosis, a betrayal, a funeral, a sudden emptiness after years of striving, and then the soul begins to tremble, not because it is weak, but because it has finally come close to truth. Buddha's story is so powerful because it is not only about leaving a palace, it is about leaving illusion, leaving the dream that suffering can be avoided forever, leaving the belief that comfort alone can save the heart, leaving the identity that says, if I can just control enough, then I will never have to face pain. So Siddhartha walks away, away from privilege, away from certainty, away from the version of life others had chosen for him. And from there begins one of the most moving journeys in spiritual history, the search not for power, but for freedom from suffering itself. His enlightenment under the Bodhi tree becomes the defining moment of that search, after which he teaches the path that includes right view, right speech, right action, right mindfulness, and right meditation. And that is why, in the Hindu storytelling lens, Buddha as an avatar of Vishnu feels so extraordinary. Because Vishnu, the preserver, does not always preserve through force. Sometimes he preserves the world by restoring wisdom. Sometimes he preserves Dharma not through battle, but through awakening people from spiritual blindness. Sometimes the greatest defeat of darkness is not destruction, it is clarity. There is something deeply healing in that, because many of us spend years fighting the wrong battles, trying to defeat pain by controlling everything, trying to defeat fear by achieving more, trying to defeat emptiness by filling our lives with noise. But Buddha's presence says something radically different. The problem is not always outside you. Sometimes the deepest prison is the one built by craving, ignorance, attachment, and misseeing. And the deepest liberation begins not when the world changes first, but when awareness does. If this story is already touching something in you, pause here for a moment and leave a comment. What is one illusion or attachment you have had to outgrow in your own life? Sometimes healing begins when we finally name what kept us asleep. In the Buddhist tradition, the Buddha's teaching turns around the recognition of suffering and the path beyond it. His first sermon lays out the way of disciplined understanding and practice, rather than escape through denial. That is why this story does not feel loud. It feels deep. Buddha does not save the world by shouting over it. He saves by seeing clearly enough that others can begin to see too. And that may be one of the rarest forms of courage. To sit still long enough to meet reality, to stop running long enough to understand pain, to become so awake that even compassion changes shape. Because the awakened heart does not look at suffering and immediately ask, "Who do I blame?" It asks, "What is the root?" That is a different kind of power. A quieter one, a harder one, the kind that does not satisfy the ego quickly, because it asks for surrender before victory. And maybe that is why Buddha can feel challenging to modern hearts. We want fast transformation. We want relief without reflection, peace without discipline, healing without stillness, meaning without renunciation. But Buddha's path whispers that freedom is not found in endless consumption, endless reaction, or endless distraction. It is found in seeing, in understanding, in loosening the grip of what we thought we could not live without. In many parts of Asia, key events in the Buddha's life, his birth, enlightenment, and passing into nirvana, are commemorated as central sacred moments, showing how his life became a spiritual map for countless people. And that is where the emotional twist of this avatar lives. Because Buddha does not come to tell us that suffering is unreal. He comes to tell us that suffering can be understood. He does not come to flatter the human ego. He comes to free it. He does not come to promise that life will never break your heart. He comes to show that even heartbreak does not have to imprison your soul forever. That is why this avatar feels less like thunder and more like dawn. It arrives quietly, but once it comes, you cannot see the world the same way again. In the Dashavatara sequence, Vishnu descends again and again to restore order when imbalance grows too great. Buddha's place in that sequence reveals something beautiful. Not every age is healed by war. Some ages are healed by conscience, some by compassion, some by a spiritual correction deep enough to change the inner direction of human life. So what do we learn from Buddha in this storytelling tradition? We learn that compassion is not weakness. We learn that awakening may be a greater revolution than conquest. We learn that suffering becomes even more dangerous when it is unconscious. We learn that wisdom is not escape from life, but a truer way of meeting it. And maybe most of all, we learn this. Not every divine answer arrives with a sword. Sometimes it arrives with an open hand, a still gaze, and a truth so deep it quietly rearranges the soul. So, if you are in a season where life feels heavy, confusing, or painfully uncertain, remember Buddha. Remember the prince who walked away from illusion. Remember the seeker who sat beneath the tree and did not move until truth became clearer than fear. Remember the teacher who showed that liberation begins the moment we stop turning away from suffering and start understanding it. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment and tell me which part stayed with you most. And if there is a god, goddess, or avatar you want me to make the next video about, comment the name below. I would love to tell that story next, because sometimes the divine does not come to conquer the world outside you. Sometimes it comes to awaken the one within,